I already hit recording. It's already on. Put the pressure on. That's how I do it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Why have we never done this?
Self-preservation? I don't know.
I mean, how long have we been working? I mean, most people don't know this, but how long have we been working on the podcast together? What, 3, 4 years, 5 years?
Yeah, it's been a minute. It's been over a month. That's for sure. No, we've never done this. Mm-mm.
Now you have done your own podcast on Making Data Simple, but we've
Yes,
never
I
done
have.
this interview together. So let's jump in. Welcome to Making Data Simple. Today I have the esteemed colleague. Are we going by Catherine or Kate today?
We're going by Kate because we're coming in with our coaching hat and our leadership hat, and my grown-up title is Catherine at work.
Feels like the party person, right? Versus
that's why I use Catherine at work, is because Catherine's like, oh man, I got to pay attention. Right. I might be in trouble. But here, Kate's like, yeah, let's hang out. Let's see about the things.
I am with Kate Mayne today, and she is the director of digital and partners worldwide here at IBM in technical sales. A very talented person on my team, but I certainly work for her. That's how this works. She coaches me a lot. And then, maybe when it hits the fan, then maybe I do some coaching myself. But she also, as we just alluded to, she helps with the guests on this podcast. We've been doing this for a while. She does a fabulous job. People think they're trying to convince me. They're really trying to convince Kate on who's going to get on. I mean, we've had Jack Black's brother. We've had the guy that wrote How to Be Bold. And then we've had a lot of tech, but no one better than you. No one better than you. So
thank you.
As always, because this is kind of how I get going, I want you to introduce yourself, talk to your history, where you've been, where you're going, what brings you here, and then we'll jump into a few topics. How's that?
That sounds great, Al. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. And I love the evidence to make sure that you keep the people who get the guests on your show happy and close. If there's any takeaway that summarizes this entire episode, it's make sure you keep the people who get your guests happy.
Well, I envision you're going to get a lot of LinkedIn now.
I think so. So let's see here. I think my background is a little bit unusual. I really thought I was going to be a therapist. So thank you for that absolutely wonderful introduction. I do have the privilege of leading the worldwide partner and digital technical teams, which means I work for them. I love that statement that you gave, that you work for me, I work for them, and they are the most brilliant minds. I just feel very privileged to do that for their influence and scope they have on the IBM business. Very privileged to do that today. What I thought I was going to do and how I got here is kind of a convoluted story. I really thought I was going to be a therapist, but then when I graduated college, I needed to be practical and get something that was a little bit more immediate. So I went into an inside sales position at Hewlett-Packard. Smiling and dialing. And I did that for several years, ascending through various roles until I, quite frankly, crashed and burned at that position. Looking back on it, I didn't have the maturity or wisdom to know how to create effective interpersonal relationships with the team members I had, mostly the executive team members, right? Because I had been promoted through the ranks. But at that time, I didn't know how to maintain those relationships and how to develop those relationships. So looking back, I think that's what happened. But it was a wonderful inflection point because I had the opportunity to take another couple of roles at different tech companies. Infor was there. And then I really started to get my groove on when I went into a business development role at a privately owned software company. And I really enjoyed everybody that I worked with there. From there, I met IBMers who gave me the opportunity to come aboard IBM. And it's been 10 years now. I've been so privileged for all of the different roles I've had at IBM. Some were great. Some were a great opportunity to learn more. But what has been consistent throughout my entire career is this drive and this curiosity to learn, to take on tough problems, to take on roles other people didn't want to take. But that's always led to increased success and scope. And then the coaching part of it really came about. I have a personal coach, Talent Evolution Systems. We started working together about 5 years ago, and that was the pivotal turning point in harnessing my blind spots, because we all have blind spots. We all have challenges. We all have strengths that really work for us. But if you don't know what you don't know, how are you going to be able to relate to things you don't know? So I started working with her. She's an executive leadership coach. And then from there, things really accelerated to what you see today, for better or for worse.
I can't imagine you crashing and burning in anything. So we'll
That's
say
because
that
I've learned a lot. It's because you're not seeing me at 28.
Right? Just to reiterate, when I say coach, I mean, there's a billion coaches out there. Kate has made this a discipline. I mean, studying coaching, learning the art of coaching, practicing. So this is very different. This is serious coaching. And I do want to get into. So look, I get this big blank page I'm staring at. With you, I've just got this blank page. However, in true Kate style, she sends me a couple of topics that we're going to discuss. I think maybe I should be worried. Here's why I think so. So I look at the topics you gave me. We can either pick women in tech. Second one is New Year, so things around the new year. This is where it goes south. Then it says, how to stick out a crap job. And I'm thinking, are you trying to tell me something subliminally or what? And then the fourth one is, what makes a good leader? Okay, maybe I'm gonna learn something today. All right, so we got 4 choices to go through. I think those are all good choices. By the way, I'm a little worried about the third one. That makes me shiver a little bit, but that's okay. I think we choose New Year. Let's charge New Year to start. Can we choose New Year to start?
I think that makes a lot of sense.
On coaching, I think this. I mean, you've got a talent here. I want to listen to how you start out your new year, and or what you work with people on most around coaching. A couple of comments I'll say to start, and then I just like your response, and I'll sit and listen. But this is the best part of the job, right? I was talking to somebody yesterday, matter of fact, and I think this holds true. I think it's so easy to differentiate yourself. Here's what I mean by this. Every sports figure, has a coach. You want to get better, you work with a coach. You get a new coach. You elevate your coach, whatever. In the professional world, I think people say, no, I got it. I don't need a coach. I mean, I talk about it and they listen and they'll ask me questions. I'll give you a perfect example, and then I'm truly going to be quiet. So I've got a personal mission statement. And my mission statement is actually in 3 forms. It's like I've got the one-liner, the paragraph, and then this big one. That's just true me in style. But I've got all 3 versions. But I have learned now, somebody will say, hey, can I see it? And I'll say, no, you can't. Not that I'm not unwilling to share. It's just that my rule on that is, all right, you show me your personal mission statement. I don't care how good or bad it is. And then I'll show you mine. And we'll share. And then we'll go from there. Most people don't. They don't take the time. They take the time to call me and ask me if they can see mine, but they won't do it themselves.
I think for me, it comes down to a very simple proposition. They have not yet seen the value that makes it worth the effort. Humans will put in a ton of energy to things that they think will be valuable. It's because it hasn't made the priority list. Whether or not we're cognizant of it or whether or not it's conscious of mind, we all have a priority list that we're working on, and we put our energy where our priorities are. That's just how we work. So where we spend our time, where we spend our energy, that is what our priorities are. So I think it's kind of the classic case of, it sounds like a good idea. I want the results from it, but it hasn't become enough of a driver. I haven't seen enough of the value in order for me to take the first step. The alternative argument to that is that people could not be aware of where to go. They could not understand how to get a coach. They could not have enough education on what it means and what outcomes they could expect from working with a business coach. It's not yet valuable enough, or they're really intimidated by the process, because there are a ton of terrible coaches out there that don't bring a lot of value. There's a ton of really good coaches out there, but the common denominator is you. You have to be willing to be open to the feedback that you might get about how to up your game. And that can be a tough, intimidating thing for a lot of people.
But is that it?
Yeah.
With the feedback? Because you got to be willing to take criticism?
Yeah. Well, Yeah, I think it is. For me and my coaching brand, I can tell that I'm effective when I am honored to have the permission to give people feedback because they are trusting that I have their best interest at heart and I have zero judgment. I frame all of my coaching in terms of effectiveness. Is what you are doing effective for you? If it's effective for you and you are happy with what you have, great. It may not be the style I do it, but it doesn't make it good or bad. So for me, what's been effective, what's been effective in working with people who are a little bit uncertain about coaching is switching the conversation from a judgment of you're doing it right or wrong into how effective is what you're doing for you today. If you're achieving what you want, peace, you're doing fine. If you're not achieving what you want, how can we be more effective in getting you there? How can we look at your communication style? How can we look at some of your mental habits? How can we look at your perspective? Because the only common denominator for people is themselves. So if we have an individual who's like, man, I've heard that making a purpose statement is very good. It's like, well, what isn't working for you today that makes you think a purpose statement will help you? What do you think you're going to get out of that? And a lot of it is just defining and becoming very clear on what they want. And that is so hard to do. And that feels really vulnerable because we've got very, very strong cultural expectations about what good looks like. And to be independent enough and to be confident enough to say, you know what, this is what works for me, that can be really intimidating. Or they simply haven't done it before. I know I hadn't done it before I worked with a coach. Like I had a sense of kind of what my values were, but to sit and grind down on it. Brene Brown has a really good piece on values and Dare to Lead, but really understand what your top values are because your values provide a governance model. To pull out tech, I love tech. They provide a governance model
Nicely
to
done.
your mission and vision statements. Without all those together, the ultimate goal, just for people who might be curious, for me, the ultimate goal of having your mission, vision, values, goals, all four of those coming to the new year topic. See how I'm bridging that there?
That's very
Coming to
good.
the new year topic. Your mission, and for individuals, I like purpose and intention statements. What is your intention for the year? That can be thought of as the statement of we're going to go to the moon. That's a mission, right? That's the thing. We're going to put humans out in space. The vision is bringing that mission to life. We're going to do it in a spaceship. We're going to have astronauts, etc. Then the values are we're going to do it in a way that is with high integrity, that everybody's going to come back. And then the goals are the actual projects of building a spaceship. So when you have all of those put together, but especially the mission, vision, values, it helps you make decisions much, much more easily. Because if you have your value statement, if a new job opportunity comes up to you and you're like, God, how do I decide whether or not to take this job, or what are the puts and takes? Because it seems like there's a bunch of trade-offs with it. If you have your mission or purpose statement for yourself as who you are as the person, and you have the vision of how that comes to life, and then you have your values, you can simply take all these decisions that you're faced with every day, run it through that filter, and it becomes much more clear if you want to evaluate it further, if it's a hard pass, or if it's an easy yes.
I'm going to say something contentious. You tell me if it's contentious or not. I think for the people that are listening that think they're high contributors and they want to be great at what they do, I would say that every professional athlete has a coach, and that's more than just the team coach. It's usually they got their own personal coach. I think that if you're a high-performing professional business leader, you have a coach. So if you're listening to this and you don't have a coach, you're probably not where you think you are if you think that you're on the top of your game. Because if you were, you'd have a coach. You think that's a fair statement?
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
I do. Because a good coach is not going to sit there and berate you for what isn't working. It's going to help you lean into your strengths more and figure out how to minimize your weaknesses and how to uncover your blind spots. So a good coach is not going to ask you to do something that's unnatural or that you're incapable of. A good coach is going to help you really understand the strengths that you bring to the table, figure out if the environment you're in is leveraging those strengths to the maximum ability, help you uncover your blind spots spots, because those blind spots, Al, I think is what you're getting to about what holds you back and where you can grow. It's really in those blind spots, and absolutely just minimizing or fencing those weaknesses. And when I say minimizing and fencing those weaknesses, if we're talking about leaders, that means going and recognizing and identifying the super smart people that can go do that for you. As a leader, you are not expected to know it all. As a leader, you're expected to have incredibly good judgment, incredibly good decision-making abilities, and you should have high IQ. That's my plug on what makes a good leader, because any style can win, but if you don't have that EQ on relating to people, it's not going to be very effective. So yes, I think all leaders, all executives should absolutely have a coach to help you recognize your strengths, lean into that, minimize and fence, and get help for your weaknesses. But most importantly, uncover those blind spots and understand if remedying or developing or shining awareness on those blind spots will help you advance to where you want to go.
Look, and if you're operating at the pace and speed, you're going to make mistakes by definition. If you make mistakes, you're going to have those blind spots. You need somebody to help you out with it one way or another. Otherwise, you're a contributor, and that may be okay too. Maybe your focus is something else, but it's not the professional life, I would say. So a wake-up call for those that are listening. I'm just saying and being honest. Let me ask you a question. I know you mentioned more than this, but on mission and values, I have both, of course. I told you about my mission statement. I got 3 forms. On my values, I've got like 16 values, and then I summarize them into 4 just as well. Yeah, that's just me. Here's my question. Which comes first? Does a mission statement come before values, or do values come before a mission statement?
Oh, that's a great question. I am of the mindset and belief system that your values shape everything. And whether or not you're conscious of what your values are, they show up in your habits, in your actions, in your day-to-day interaction. So for me, it's most critical to understand what your values are, because at the end of the day, circumstances change, your mission can change, your vision can change, but at the end of the day, your core values are that governance model to provide you either guardrails from going off or provide you that foundation and sturdiness. So I tend to focus on values as a first step, because I think that's harder for people than mission, vision, and goals. So I tend to think about it for 2025. What is my intention? What is my purpose? And if I have a guiding set of values to really act as that scaffolding and that governance model, everything else seems to flow.
Look, I tend to agree with you. For me, and for people that are really pushing the envelope as hard as possible, you got to have that, because you got to check. You got to come back to that governance, like you mentioned. Sometimes I look at my career, steps I've taken, and I would beat myself up over it, right? Unnecessarily. Yeah. And I've got people, thank God, accountability partners in my life that I've shared my values with them. And they will say, well, wait a second, you're beating yourself up. All right. But didn't you put family before wealth in that case? Or they'll say, look, would you give up coaching 7th grade girls basketball for blah, blah, blah? And I go, oh, no, I wouldn't. That was priceless for me. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right. I think values has to come first. And I go back to that value wheel all the time. Mm-hmm. Like I was listening to a podcast on Stevie Nicks, and she has no children or anything else like that.
Yeah.
Her value was, hey, I'm going to make music. That's number 1. Everything else was second. And that's great for her. Fantastic.
Right.
That was her choice. So it's values before mission. Mm-hmm. Do you have to write them down to make them real?
Of course you do.
Well, why would you say that? You say that, but some people are listening. I guarantee you, I would say 80% of the people, here's my guess, maybe I'm wrong, 80% of the people listening haven't put down a personal mission statement.
Yes, I would agree. It's really tough and it feels huge. The only coaching I can give for that is to take a pass at it and just do it, because once you are able to articulate what your mission is And right now is okay. And you can substitute the words purpose or intention. But once you get it down, then that unlocks the thinking and the brainstorming. I'm a huge fan of a mind mapping tool. So use a mind mapping tool to just get it all out of your system. And then you can start to kind of slot things into, are these mission statements, vision stuff, value stuff? Are these the goals or projects that I want to do to serve all of this? It kind of flows, right? But if it was easy, people would do it. So you talk about differentiating and how you want to differentiate yourself from your peers. If you have a mission statement for what you're going to accomplish this year, whether it's in your job or your personal life or whatever, taking the time to think that through, that's what the writing reflects, is it gives us an option to think that through. I think the point, if I was going to back up one step and figure out what the point is, I think the point is to articulate what your mission is in a way you can reflect on. So if that's recording a 5-second video that you feel comfortable coming back to and watching and remind yourself, if that's dictating it into a tool that you can then reflect on, the point is to get it out there so it can stare back at you and you can think on it in a little bit more detail. So I'm less rigorous or rigid on the medium. It's more about actually getting it out of your head and seeing it reflected back to you to see whether or not it's accurate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think there was some statistic that I read once that writing something down, your objective, increases the probability by, I don't know, like, I'm going to say it completely wrong, but it was like 80% or something that you'll actually.
Oh, yeah. It's huge. It's huge. Writing it down, articulating it out of your head onto some sort of medium is just immensely powerful because it clarifies it and codifies it, and then you can adjust it. It feels scary. It feels like you're locking it in. Okay, this is my mission, as though that is the mission that it will be forever, right? These are the values that will exist forever. Values, I find, tend to be a little bit more stable, but your mission can adapt to your changing life, your changing priorities, what comes up for you, new jobs, things like that. It can adapt to illness, life changes, right? So giving yourself permission to, and that's the thought management part of coaching, is to give yourself permission to say, okay, this is my mission statement for right now. It's the best I know it on the data I have. Again, thank you, tech. I love the data reference, right? Best data that I have. Let's go with this. If we need to update and course correct, we will. But otherwise, for me, I have a really high drive to kind of see that things are purposeful. I want to do it for a reason. So if I don't have a mission statement, even if I course correct it, it's like I'm rowing just to row. I would rather row towards an island that I may think I see off in the fuzzy distance because it feels like it's putting my energy towards something. And that's what a mission statement kind of does for me.
I think most people look at it and think, one, it's fluffy. Why would I do it? And then the second piece is, when you really think about it, it's super hard. You think it'd be easy, super hard. You put those two together, I'll put it off. I don't need to do it. Speaking of putting things off or whatever, starting the new year, somebody's coming to you and they're looking for how to kick off, make this year the best year ever. I want to make this year, Kate, the best year that I could ever make it. I need your coaching. What is your advice on setting my goals and objectives to a point that I'm actually going to do them?
Write your end of year statement. That's the biggest tool. So if you imagine yourself, so do some, I think it's called proception, I think is the term for it. You imagine yourself in the future, December 31st, you're writing what you did this year and what you accomplished. That is an easy way to brainstorm ideas that you want to do. I want to revisit something around the mission that people feel like it's fluffy. If it was fluffy, companies would not invest huge time, energy, and dollars into writing their mission statement, right? Mission statements are incredibly powerful. But how do people get started on this year, making it the best year ever? The easiest entry for that for me is thinking about December and writing back. So December 31, 2025, looking back on the year, what do I wish I could have said? The tool I use to do this is a mind map. I use Mindomo, Mindomo, not affiliated. It's just a free tool where you can easily do that. You can do it on a piece of paper. Whiteboards are awesome. Sticky notes work, but basically brainstorming all of the things. You don't have enough time to brainstorm, take 5 minutes and time box it and do it, but brainstorm all of the things that you would like to do. Don't show anybody. This is you and you in your private life. You don't need to show anybody. Brainstorm that out and then start to kind of organize it. With the end in mind, that's where you can follow the tried and true process of breaking it down into hunks, chunks, and bites, basically understanding what are the big things you need to accomplish, what are the smaller things beneath that, and then finally, what are the daily tasks that you would need to accomplish in order for those to add up. But really, it's about giving yourself permission to brainstorm what you'd like to be able to say you did at the end of the year. Do you want to go on vacation 3 times? Do you want to have achieved 150% of your goal? Do you want to read 8 books, right? Whatever it is, that's what you want to be thinking back on. And then look at the people around you. Ask what they're doing. Ask yourself what you were proud of and you liked last year. What do you wish you had done last year? The trick to making it the best year is to drop the judgment. It's about you. The future is promised to no one. And so if you drop the judgment, which you kind of alluded to a little bit, that we have, I should be working and not go on vacation. That's a judgment statement. And that's also a cultural lionizing of working 24/7 statement instead of lionizing working to effectiveness. But that's a whole nother show.
It's like what
This
we
is
say in
about
our head, right? That we beat ourselves up.
Exactly. So if you can suspend that reality and just pretend for 5 minutes that you weren't going to beat yourself up about what made you happy and what you wanted to get done in the year and see what came out from a brainstorming session, you would be astonished to understand how straightforward it would be to chart a course to your best year ever. Because once you list those elements of what a best year looks like, does it look like I'm going to feel great in my body? I'm going to feel great with the amount of sleep I'm getting. I'm going to feel great with my relationships at work. If you start to understand what are the core elements instead of the things, I'm going to lose 10 pounds, I'm going to get that promotion. If you start to identify what it looks like rather than defining what it is, so many more opportunities open up for you to have the best year ever. So this is a nuanced conversation, which means it's not very helpful and not very straightforward. But this is how it works for me in my head, is that when people, what I've noticed for myself and others that I've coached is when they define what success looks like, meaning, let's take jobs, for example. They define that I'm going to be an executive in a company. I'm going to be this executive. I'm going to be this technical sales executive in this company. The more specific they get, the less ways there are to fulfill that. Versus if they say things like, I want to be a leader of people, I want to hold a P&L, I want to work in a technology industry. When you define the characteristics about what you want rather than what it has to be, maybe a better metaphor would be like fruit. Instead of saying, I want an apple, if you say something like, I want to have a piece of fruit, there's lots more fruits than there are apples. So if you define the characteristics of what you want rather than defining how it has to look like, many more opportunities show up because things that you wouldn't have even considered suddenly become visible. It's about narrowing the perspective, which can be super useful, right? I'm not saying that doesn't have its place. I'm just saying when it comes to defining, because people often try to search for this, like, I want to have a really happy life. The more you open the aperture to opportunities, the more opportunities seem to surface.
But can it get, like, if it's not detailed enough to be able to achieve anything?
Must have misspoken. I'm saying, does my definition of success look like a title and look like a dollar value? Or does my definition of success include a dollar value but can show up without that title?
This
I'm
is why
just
you need a coach.
encouraged.
You got to walk through this stuff.
That's exactly right. So that's why I'm encouraging taking a step back and looking at the characteristics of something rather than defining what it has to be tends to open your perspective and open the aperture of what's possible.
Now, will you take your mission, your values, then set objectives for the year and then plan
Mm-hmm.
out, like almost project plan those objectives after you mind map it throughout the year?
100%. Now, how diligent I am about that, how much I stay up on that is its own project in and of itself. But by doing that, you can really chain together a set of habits. You and I are big fans of Atomic Habit. You and I are big fans
Yeah.
of stacking habits, and that you can really chain together the habits that turn into the actions, that turn into the tasks that then build. Because often it's not going to be something that happens in a day or a week, right? I mean, these are things that are over time. So
I
for
totally agree.
me, if I don't have milestones along the way, which is what breaking the big goal down into small goals helps do, I lose momentum. I lose energy. I lose steam because I'm like, I'll either do that the night before, impossible, or I just will feel like all the energy I'm putting forward isn't to a point and I'm not seeing any progress.
I almost would say, at least my point of view is if you can't make it a habit, it maybe shouldn't be your value or goal. I'll give you an example. The easiest thing to remember is health, family, purpose, wealth, in that
Mm.
order. For health, if you want to get in shape, exercise every day. It's got to be something that you're set to do every day. Now, the thing to make it easier, though, is you don't have to define like this really aggressive workout where you're doing weights
Mhm.
like every day. I mean, maybe a walk counts that day, but it's every day. It's a habit. You got to make it so it can be a habit. And once you get to that habit, then you've got something, and you'll miss from time to time and you can't beat yourself up over that. You got to give yourself some relief, but it's every day. That's the way I look at it if you're really going to make change in your life. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's why I think atomic habits come in. And again, but then you also got to have the mindset to say, look, if you miss a day, you forgive yourself. That's okay. You miss one day. And I'll work out 3 days a week, but then one day turns into the next. Is it going to be this day? All right, well, I'm too tired today. I'm going to do it next day, and then all of a sudden it's like, I don't even know what's going on. Well, I worked out 2 days this week. I mean, and then I feel bad about myself. If you're going to do it, it's like every day.
I love the idea of redefining what success looks like. That's why I heard you say when you do the idea of every day. And then habits make it easier because after you overcome the initial effort to get it to be a habit, the cognitive load just goes down to zero. You don't have to think about it. You don't think about brushing your teeth. You don't think about doing these things. So habits are incredibly powerful once they become a habit because they take zero cognitive load and you don't have to make a decision. The hard part about starting a habit is having to decide to do it every day. That takes down our decision willpower. Basically, we only have so much decision making and willpower in us in a day, and so it drains that. I would be curious, what's the priority? Because if people can't connect to the why statement, people can tolerate incredibly great, but mostly they can tolerate incredibly awful things if the why is big enough. So if there's a why connection, and it can't be my usual why when it comes to stuff about how I look is my vanity why. It's got to be like, I really want to run around with my kid. I really want to feel great. Exercise boosts your brain capacity and your thinking ability. I really want that. So that why becomes a lot more powerful. So for me, it's always a step back of, why do you think you should? What's the priority? If there's other things that are other priorities,
I think that's a great
does
point.
that get you where you want to go? Is that going to be effective for you? Hence my whole thing around less right and wrong and more about what's going to be effective for you in your life.
I think that's a great point. I think you also make a great point in terms of taking the decision out of it. That means a lot to me because, I mean, if you're doing something hard and working out, let's be honest, a lot of people don't do it. It's hard. You got to get up.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make you feel good. You're going to
Not in the
sweat.
beginning.
Maybe you, man, I could be at work and work another hour or whatever, whatever it is. If you take the decision out of it versus like, I'm going to do 2-3 days a week, then you're thinking, well, is this the day? I don't know if I feel up to the day,
Yes.
but if I know, it's every day. then I don't have
Yeah.
to make a decision. I just got to do it. But like I said, it can be various in terms of what the intensity is. All right. So you plan out throughout your year, which is great.
Yes.
Do you have like a set program in the week that helps you stay on top of things? I mean, anything you do that helps drive your week and that lead up to the month, that lead up to the year?
I had a great conversation with my coach actually just yesterday. And once you get the mission vision, the tools that are out there for managing your projects and goals associated with that there's myriad. I use a paper planner, and then I use digital tools as well to keep track of the tasks. So you got to get it broken down into tasks, but I use the mind map as we talked about. I use a paper planner. And then I use tasks. Evernote has great task keeping. OneNote has task keeping. So does Outlook. So I think the tasks that are available to you are myriad. The part that is the habit for me is taking personal planning time on a daily basis, anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes, to review what I have done and what I will do. So it's a process. I take that private perspective planning time. I got my task list. Task list goes on the calendar. If it actually gets finished that day, awesome, yay. If it doesn't, it goes back on the task list to be redispositioned again. And of course, I really like the Eisenhower matrix, urgent, important, urgent, not important, et cetera, to help define the priorities. I am pretty comfortable with a lot of tasks that don't get done because I am very comfortable with the idea that there is a priority list and there is a line to that priority list. So for me, it's getting comfortable with the fact that I may disappoint people because I haven't completed a task that was important to them. But the way I go about that is I communicate back to them and check in and say, hey, I'm not going to get this done. We need to find another way to accomplish it. Or is it still a priority? And 99% of the time it's not, and we can drop it. But for me, summarizing, once you get the mission, vision, values, which is really around mind mapping and writing in long form, I use a paper planner. I use the different tools that are available in the system. But that habit is that private planning time with the task list and dispositioning those tasks according to priority.
You want to listen to my crazy process?
Yes, I do.
I'm being very vulnerable.
Because there's not one right way to do it. So listener audience, there's not one right way to do it. I don't want to say that my way is right, Al's way isn't right. It's what's effective for you. But the core thing is to think about it and to plan and to prioritize. Okay.
To that end, you're absolutely right, because I always reinvent myself, and
Yes.
It's actually kind of fun and gets you excited when you do reinvent yourself, because then you can do something different, use different tools. Like I just started using Monday.com. I'm not giving Monday.com.
It's not a paid advertisement, listeners. This is, I like it too. Absolutely.
I've tried that. I mean, I've used OneNote. I've used all kinds. I've done just on a piece of paper. But every day I divide that health, family, purpose, and wealth into different sections. In my daily routine, that turns out to be family, which I usually put at the later part of the day, even though it's a top priority. So health, always start there. That's exercise, that's mindfulness, that's learning. Then I go to wealth, which is investments I'm making in my life, eminence, my brand. I try to do the hardest items the first part of the day. Doesn't always work, right? You know my calendar. And then purpose is it's what I call job hacking. I want to hack my job to what I want it to be, not what it is. That's strategies. That's clients I'm working with. That's hard thinking, big rocks that I'm moving. And I've got different hours that I assign to each one of those. And then at the end of the day, it's next actions, which is like admin, operations, that kind of stuff. I divide my day in that way. And my admin, Tanya, she goes crazy because I try to have themes during the week too.
Yes.
It doesn't always work. In fact, it blows up all the time, but I try to not context switch. I try to keep it down to a minimum, like Monday's leadership, Tuesday operations, Wednesday are my focus days. I try to keep that day as clean as possible. Doesn't nearly always work, but I try. Thursdays like networking, Fridays like culture, teaming, that kind of stuff. And then Saturdays just being home, Sundays family, charity and stuff. I try to make that work. And then I plan out my year, kind of like you mentioned. I read the other day, it was a financial advisor, and I thought this was great advice. I don't know what you think about this. My coach has talked to me about having bucket list items. And
Yeah.
you need to have a bucket list.
Yeah.
This financial advisor, and I thought it was really good advice, said his advice for the year was to check off one of your bucket list items. Don't wait, because he sees it all the time where everybody waits until they retire or something before they check off their bucket list, and they never get to it for one reason or another. Today, I thought that was pretty good advice. I don't know what you think about that. I think that's something my coach would say.
Absolutely. The future is promised to no one, which is really quite ghoulish and dark, but it's true. And so if you keep that in mind, and that you're responsible for your own life and your own happiness and whatever your bucket items are for you, you absolutely have to take the initiative to put it in, because nobody is giving any medals at the end of the day for the extra hours you put in. If the extra hours you put in are the only way that you can see to get there, to get to the success factors that you want, and those success factors at work are a higher priority than your bucket list item, fine. But for most people, I think they feel that they might be denigrated for doing their bucket list items because, oh, you should be working, right? That's kind of the culture we have and the mental attitude we have. But you absolutely have to make space for that, because you don't know what the future will bring, and you don't know what new opportunities and new mindsets and new exposures and new experiences you'll have by doing your bucket list item. If you don't do that, that's a part of yourself that's unrealized and unrecognized as well. And you have to bring your whole self to your life, right? You just absolutely have to do that.
How do you do that, though, Kate? Let me ask you, how do you stay present? Because you get wrapped up, particularly if you are, or you want to be a high performer, you always want to go that extra mile. I mean, how do you stay present? It's like, oh, this email, though, it's so important. And it is important in some way. I mean, it's what you do every day, but how do you have balance?
That's a great question. I have developed a habit around keeping perspective. I think one of the concepts I was recently exposed to that might be helpful for people to go out and take a look on is called the overview effect. Have I told you about this yet? The astronauts?
No, you haven't.
I also practice transcendental meditation. And so I was attending a transcendental meditation it's basically a group transcendental meditation hosted by Bob Roth. It happens at 6 p.m. Eastern every single day of the week. And he has a few minutes intro and he introduces a topic. Well, today's intro, this was last week, was about the overview effect. And it's the feeling of awe and transcendence that astronauts get when they see the Earth from space. Because when you see the Earth from space, you realize that we are on a spaceship sharing all of the same resources of the spaceship. Think Star Trek Enterprise, think any space movie that you have out there. That is our Earth hurtling through space at 67,000 miles an hour while we're spinning 1,000 miles an hour, right? So we are actually on a spaceship spinning through the universe into the great unknown, but we are all sharing it. Unless you step back and use whatever touchstone thought process you can to allow yourself to step back out of the immediacy and urgency that is created by all of the technology and all of the cultural pressures, especially being in a technical organization that comes with that, especially being in a technical organization that has highly competitive people, which is usually really defines tech, and tech is very ambiguous about what good looks like. So I have a whole stack of thinking on that. But whatever touchstone you need to have to remind yourself to step out and say, I am a human being doing this. This is not who I am. This is how I choose to spend my time, and I'm being remunerated for that. I'm being paid for that time that I'm spending. But this is not who I am. This is how I am choosing to spend my time. Whatever mental touchstone you have to have for that, go back to that frequently. If it's reminding yourself that one time you got brave and you took a vacation that felt like you were doing a bad thing because you actually took a vacation and it turned out great, and that reminds you of, okay, I wasn't fired when I took a vacation. It's probably going to be okay now. But whatever it takes, for me, it's that thought process that we're all on a spaceship hurtling through space, because that's really all encompassing and brings us all together. I like that idea. And it puts us in perspective how small we are. I was looking at the moon the other night because we're having the wolf moon, the big moon right now. And I was thinking, some asteroid hit that moon to create that thought on it. So all these things before us and all these things that'll have to happen after us, that is the touchstone for me to keep the urgent emails from my boss, in perspective, right? Because this will pass. If it's going to estate sales, if it's looking at memories when your kids were small, if it's looking at pictures from when you were young, it is whatever it's going to take for you to have that grounding point. The last thing I'll say on this is that there's a proverb that kind of goes, the rain is falling, the farmer smiles, the bride cries. It is just things that are happening. It is about what the bride who's having an outdoor wedding, I should amend that. But it is all about the perspective you keep, dictates what you see. If you have a very small perspective that's very fixed, you're not going to see all that there is out there, like an aperture on a camera. So keeping that perspective, and then, like you said, Al, making the mental habit. If it's a sticky on your mirror while you're brushing your teeth, that you stare at that, whatever it takes for you to create that mental habit to keep that perspective, that's how you stay grounded.
We could keep going forever. What's your staple in coaching? Just remember this: a motto, a dogma. I don't know. Is there anything?
Yes. I think I actually wrote this down because I suspected you would ask. So I can't do one thing, but I'm going to be pretty succinct.
Okay.
I'm 100% a believer that you have the right answer for you. So whoever you are as a person, you have the right answer for you. It's about uncovering what you need to do to get there. Second is it effective? Is whatever you're doing effective to where you want to go? That's my big thing, as we already heard about. And then I think anybody can lead. Anybody can lead and win. We really have this archetype that the people who lead and the people who win look a certain way. They're always very driving. They're always very influential or very charismatic. But I think anybody can win, especially my quiet, thoughtful folks who speaking up seems like they would rather have their leg cut off than speaking up. Anybody can win. It's just, how do we bring that forward in a way that's effective in their situation? So I believe in the human. I believe that any style can win. And I believe in a lens of being effective, not being right. And then all the tools that surround that.
Would you also put "it's never too late" in there?
Oh, God, yes. It's never too late. Oh, my God. If it was too late, I would have been done. Right? I mean, I've made so many mistakes. I've made so many interpersonal mistakes. I have so many missed opportunities. I look back now and I'm like, oh, girl, you could have done things so differently. But the great news is that it's not too late. I keep trying. I keep showing up. I keep trying another thing to see if I could be more effective for where I want to go. It's never too late because the circumstances always change. So it's never too late.
All right, we didn't get to 3 of the other topics because, as usual, I'm a loudmouth and I keep going. But hold on.
Uh-oh.
So listeners, I'm curious. I mean, hit me on LinkedIn or otherwise. If you're more of these coaching type of sessions, we'll weave those in with technology. Look, I'm going to hear them either way. Got to keep learning, and this stuff is important to me. But I'd be curious to see if it's important to you, and to give you a taste. Of what you would hear in the future. Like, this is rapid fire.
Okay.
Advice for women in tech.
Have very strong clarity on what you want to get out of the role.
Man, that was pretty good. Okay. All right. Secondly, how to stick out a crap job.
Identify your why.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And finally, what makes a good leader?
I'm going to steal from one of my favorite books called Executive Coaching with Backbone and Heart. What makes a good leader is backbone, decisiveness based on the available facts at the time, but being decisive and removing ambiguity, and heart, which is EQ. It's about being able to work with other people. I don't mean heart in the touchy-feely soft way. I mean heart in having strong EQ that gives you permission to coach people to their success. You want shared mutual success. And if you have earned their trust and you give feedback in a way that is authentic, that says this is going to make you more effective, I think people will listen all day long. But too often feedback is given in form of criticism. Feedback is given in form of you should have known, you could do better, instead of, hey, this is how you be more effective.
You want to say just a minute on the tools that do exist that are out there that will help perform like a self-assessment? It's data-driven, speaking of making data simple. There are tools out there that can tell you who you are and what personalities align or don't, and how you can augment your behavior or style to those personalities.
Yeah, I'm a fan of using the TTISI out of Scottsdale, Target Training International out of Scottsdale. I'm a really big fan of their tools. They have a DISC assessment, which is pretty common. You can Google that one, but they also have the top 25 professional skills that you need that they call their DNA. And then they have ones that talk about your behavioral profile, which kind of goes into your why, what motivates you to do what you do. I would say that none of these capture who you are as a human. They also have a really, really great EQ profile assessment. They do not capture who you are as a human. They do not encapsulate the value you bring to the world. It is not about being right or wrong. It's just learning your user's manual of how you show up to yourself, how you show up to other people, so you can then leverage that to be the most effective you can. So if it's not working right now because you identify that the people that you work with have a completely different communication style than you do, how do you bridge to that communication style? So it's really, for me, the data-driven is an assessment of where I'm strong, where I may have some blind spots, and how I can put those to work. But I use the ones out of TTISI.
I use those as well.
It's so wonderful for teams, because then you can see if you have like one lone person who's worrying about charts and everybody else is like spreadsheet people, that lone person is going to feel completely ostracized. So it can help you get more balanced teams in order to get your projects done. It doesn't encompass who you are, but it's really powerful in helping to understand how you can work better together, like you and your wife.
Yeah. Last question.
Okay.
At least for today, if you had only one self-help book that you could take with you, or you would recommend, or you were going to read next, or you were going to read for the first time, last time, or again, what would that one self-help book be?
Crucial Conversations.
Really, it came pretty quick.
I just reread it.
You just reread it?
Yes,
Fantastic.
because Crucial Conversations is about how to have tough conversations with people. You are always going to have tough conversations, whether it's with your toddler, your 13-year-old, your boss, your husband, wife, spouse, whoever. You're always going to have tough conversations. How can you be effective? And the two key TLDRs for it: find mutual respect, find shared purpose, and then find a way to, there's actual tips and tricks in the book of how to engage in those conversations so that you can be heard. Again, going to effectiveness, not right. Crucial Conversations.
Kate, thank you for taking the time and being here. I greatly appreciate it. It's great.
I had a blast. This is so fun. It was
very
wonderful.
different than what we do on a regular basis.
Yeah, it was great.
It is great.
Thank you.
Again. So we've got 3 other topics that we can hit now that you gave to me. I'm really worried. We didn't get to the one topic. See how I skipped that one? I skipped the if you're in a crap job topic.
Well, and then notice I did the long pause where I could see you starting to sweat bullets of what's the one thing. Right. No, I actually, that came up because I have my husband to thank for this. I was asking him about topics, and he knows I've been talking to a lot of people who are frustrated in their current roles today. Not me. I'm really happy. But there's a lot of people who are frustrated, and I have been there. I have extensive experience with that. So how do you make it work for you in a meaningful way until you get to your next job? So that's where that came from.
I know that I'm too into self-help. I told you this the other day, but I got, as a gift from my daughters, I got the box of pep talks, and
I love it.
It's really awesome. I have to say, I haven't even opened up half of them because it's almost like I want to save them. I need to open them up, but like, read me when you wonder why you matter. Read me when you feel like you fail. Read me when you've done the work and need a high five. Read me when a little tough love. Oh, this will be a good one. Read me when a little tough love might help. Obviously, that I'm doing the coaching or taking it a little too far because it's at home. So much so that I got pep talks now. Anyway,
I love it. I mean, when people denigrate self-help, they're missing the one person who can help them, which is themselves,
man,
right?
you got so many quotable. Like my Twitter is going to be full now.
Oh, that's what cracks me up. To be continued, Al. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And listeners, thank you so much for listening. Hit us on almartintalksdata@gmail.com.